It is only on days like today, the anniversary of the day the tables finally turned, that I allow the memories to resurface, that I truly dwell on the totality of the destruction we faced. Despite my rank, despite my years of petitioning, I was never able to gain access to the complete truth of what happened at the spaceport. I know only this: had brave space marines not given their lives, knowing they would never hear our thanks, not a single man, woman or child would live to remember the war. The Adeptus Astartes wage wars against powerful nascent empires, scheming ethereal deities, and unrelenting abominations. Stemming the tide of the mutant, heretic, and alien with each passing hour, billions have perished to protect the vanguard of humanity and sunder weapons capable of destruction on a galactic scale. For today, we shall elucidate a battle which threatened the extinction of among the most well-regarded and noble Space Marine chapters, a war of misfortune, grit, and defiance. The doom of the Crimson Fists, the invasion of Rin's world. It won't be long now. I can barely comprehend the numbers we face. The orbital defense grid was overstretched from the start. The sky went dark with their ships. I should have executed someone for that. According to records, the missile and plasma defense batteries hadn't been inspected by a tech priest in over 300 years. At the very least, there should have been some kind of warning. Why was there no word from the relay station on Dagoth? I can only imagine that the Orcs struck there first, and with such speed that there was no time to alert the rest of the sector. Now, Bad Landing pays the price. If anyone receives this, it doesn't matter who you are. You must send word to the Crimson Fists. Do not try to aid us alone. Only the Adeptus Astartes can help us now. There is no fight for a lesser force. An Orc incursion of this magnitude, it has to be a war. And if it isn't checked here, it will grow. By the throne will it grow. Lord of mankind, don't let it be too late. The Greenskin Menace is a force of unrelenting violence, single-minded in their rampages to sate their appetite for destruction, violence, and killing. A pox upon the stars, made by hubristic beings of supreme arrogance. Such was their folly to quell the primordial empire of the stars. To this day, the runoff of their biological weapon continues to harry the stars. Orc wars erupt throughout the galaxy as powerful warlords rise and fall. The prosperity of the Greenskins, such as it is, burgeoning with continuing acts of slaughter as their muscle sinews grow and meager intelligence blossoms. Sundering one another's empires so that only the strongest of Orcs rise to prominence. The expanse of one such fiefdom gave rise to a terrible foe which would ravage the domains of the Sons of Rogel Dawn. Warboss Snagrot, arch-arsonist of the Caradon system, fought to expand his domains. His war's borders spanning from Nocturne to Black Reach, as the single largest greenskin presence, blemishing the void. Seeking mighty foes, as is their nature, Snagrod, having won the warbands of the Loki sector, sought spoils anew. The warboss setting its sights on the verdant agri-world colony of Bad Landing during 989.M41. Showing incredible savvy for such a primitive Xenos, Snagrod's war targeted astropathic communication outposts, allowing for his fleet's unopposed arrival within orbit of the planet. Millions perished as Commissar Al-Hasbaldo held the line, ordering a desperate cry for salvation as his meager forces stood against an army entirely overwhelming in its deployments. A protectorate of the second founding chapter, the Crimson Fists, before receiving hails for aid, Codicia Rufio Tararo relayed ill portents of the Emperor's Tarot to his battle brothers, imparting a single warning: upheaval. Upon receiving Balder's transmission, Chapter Master Pedro Cantor dispatched the Third Company under the command of the Master of the Line, Captain Draken. The beleaguered planetary defense forces, Mordian 18th, Lamas 24th, and Boros 49th Regiments, holding fast until Astartes reinforcements could arrive. Intercepting Orc broadcasts spoken in dialects of the Goth, Death Skulls, evil sons, and dozens of minor tribes, Snagrod's lieutenant, Urzog Mag Kull, demanded all raiding parties within the Segmentum Tempestus to rally under the banner of the Arch-Arsonist. Intending to target their communication station and purification plant within Krugerport, Captain Draken and his men deployed via Thunderhawks, gathering intel from the Orcs' blind spots until they were ready to strike. The Freeman reconnaissance team, led by designation Shadow 1, Scout Sergeant Ezra Machina, personally seconded to aid the mission by Captain Icario. Their slow advance, 30 kilometers from their objective, would require restraint and patience, no matter the horrors being perpetrated to the civilian populace. As Shadow 1 moved into position, Captain Draken and his men followed the infrared, visible marked path left by the scouts. 3 10-man squads sidestepping Orc positions until they were in the heart of Krugerport. Separating each squad to pursue their own objectives, as Draken's men achieved success on the first objective and began to approach the water purifiers, Machina advised his commander that the young scout, Janus Kennan, had sighted Urzog Mag Kull within his crosshairs. A gigantic orc the size of a dreadnought, Kennan surmised that with a single shot, the war would be ended, crowning him the hero of Bad Landing. Ordering Kennan not to fire upon the orc, Machina watched in horror as the foolhardy scout fired upon the war boss once, twice, 3 times. The contraption mounted on its back, deflecting every precise round as every greenskin within the plaza became alerted to the Crimson Fist presence. Surrounded by hundreds of greenskins, Draken ordered a full withdrawal, yet so deep within enemy lines, such a maneuver would regardless prove costly. His own life lost in the ensuing chaos as Sergeant Werner attempted to retrieve his master's body for extraction. Returning from the battle with only 28 men, 56 had perished because of Kennan's arrogance. The punishment for such a grievous lapse of judgment costing the scout everything, as the chapter librarians erased his mind, allowing for the Tech Marines to convert him into a gun servitor. After 15 days' absence, the Voidcraft Crusader had returned with only doom and dismay as rewards for their efforts. A dire omen for the misfortune still to befall such a noble and proud chapter. "Make room," he told the 2 on his right. He stepped over their bench and sat down beside them. "Gather close, the rest of you," he called out. "Make sure you can all hear me." Wordlessly, the young serfs from other tables rose and gathered around, their fellows making room for them so that the benches became closely packed. There was a certain primal comfort in this new proximity. Huddled together like this, the shuddering of the mountain lost a little of its edge. "Now," said Sivales, "how many of you understand what is happening outside?" None raised a hand. They all knew that the Fortress Monastery was under attack by orcs, of course, but none had ever seen one. All they knew of the Greenskins was the stories the older serfs sometimes told, always third-hand, and whatever they could glean from the friezes that decorated many of the chapter corridors. Ancient artwork in which Crimson Fist heroes were depicted, slaying thick green figures by the hundreds. "You know that the aliens hope to surprise Master Cantor, yes? They hope to strike hard at the chapter's foundations and gain a quick victory. Well, try to imagine how frustrated the foolish Greenskin leader must be feeling right now. He and his troops have spent years preparing, maybe even decades. His armies have crossed great stretches of cold, dark space, intent on obliterating the single greatest threat to their species in the entire sector. They risked death by the millions, exiting the warp dangerously close to a planet, losing many of their most powerful ships in the process. It's true. And now, having finally reached their goal, they launch their payloads, only to find their weapons utterly useless. Every last bomb they drop explodes harmlessly on our shields. Afraid? Us? Bro, no. It is fine comedy." He saw a few faces brighten as they listened, but the walls still rumbled. The bombardment seemed endless, and it was clear the youngsters needed more from him. "When I was your age, I experienced the greatest fear of my life. Do you know what that was?" "You saw a Xenos," said a wide-eyed boy of 9 from across the table. "No, not that." A demon then," said another of about the same age. The others hissed at him and made warding signs, and he shrank back from them. Sivales frowned and shook his head, but he was not angry. "No, not that. And we do not say that word aloud, child. Remember your lessons. Well, it seems none of you will ever guess, so I will tell you. The greatest fear of my life was that my chance to serve the chapter was lost forever. I was not much older than you are when I discovered I would never be an Astartes. I had wanted it so much, I doubted the worth of any other kind of life. I thought my life was over. I was sure I would be put to death. But I've lived a life better than I ever deserved, and so will each of you. The chapter needs you, you know, and each of us need the chapter. Master Cantor knows all your names. He cares for all the Chosen. In fact, he once said to me, "Ramir, the Chosen are like this mountain." "How so, my lord?" I asked him. "They are the rock on which the chapter stands," he told me. "It is by their labors that the Battle Brothers are always ready for war. I only wish the rest of the Imperium knew how much of our glory and honor rightly belongs to the ones who serve us." "He really said that?" asked a boy on Savale's left. "He did. Throughout your lives, the chapter will ask much from each of you. Sometimes you will be tired, but you must go on. Sometimes you will feel pain, but you must overcome it. You must give everything you have to your duties. Lord Hellblade is depending on you. The chapter's victories are our victories, too. Do not forget it." He pointed upwards towards the high ceiling and raised his eyes. "When the orcs finish dropping their useless bombs, our masters will begin the real fight, and they will finish it too. You will see. The Crimson Fist cannot be overcome. Even the accursed Scythians failed in the end and fled into the Great Dark to escape the chapter's wrath." The air in the refectorium had brightened noticeably now. Most of the boys had straightened in their seats. Savale saw pride burning in bright eyes. Good, he thought. "I hope you all know Gordeau's 9th litany against fear." The youngest looked nervous and guilty, but the others nodded. "If you don't know it," Savale said kindly, "just listen and do your best. You will soon pick it up." So he led them in the litany, their voices joining to fill the air and challenge the noise of the bombs. They hardly noticed when the bombs stopped falling. A short time later, when death came to take them all, that was how it found them, unafraid, with pride in their hearts. Savales need not have worried about the worth of his life. He had lived it with great honor, and it ended in the only place he ever called home. Aghast at the losses incurred from such a seemingly sure-proof mission, Pedro Cantor suspended all ongoing operations of the chapter and ordered all hands to return to their homeworld, Rinnsworld. Bad Landing would fall in only 2 weeks of Orc occupation, its plunder further reinforcing their resources as the Xenos reveled in their victory against the Emperor's Angels. Reorganizing the chapter to defend their homeworld, Orc reprisal was inevitable. Yet the populace of Rinnsworld had grown complacent under the guardianship of such stalwart heroes of the Imperium. Slow to act, as the planet's ruling class believed even the Orcs not to be foolish enough to brazenly attack such a bastion of the Imperium. Peace had reigned for 1,264 years, uninterrupted, under the stewardship of the Sons of Rogel Dawn. As Cantor rallied the Planetary Defense Force, the Rinnsguard, to prepare for invasion, Captain Drigo Alves made way for New Rin City to bolster the capital. Warboss Snagrod boasting as his rantings broadcast planet-wide, proclaiming Rinnsworld to be his next conquest. Amassing his Inferno horde consisting of 110 of his personally conquered warbands and 45 Speedfreak warbands, the 18 warbands of the Black Flame tribe, 18 Speedfreak warbands of the Flaming Skulls, 5 flight-capable warbands of Killchopper's Blitz Brigade, and 20 Burner Boy warbands of Big Mech Big Ed's Pyromancers. Armored contingents such as the Scorched Earth crew pledged 270 Scorchers, 24 Flame Stompers, 80 Scorchers, and 120 Pyro Bombers to the already impressive 21 Gargants, already available to be constructed and deployed. Supported by his lieutenants, Urzog Magkull, Ed Boiler, Hruck, Thrug Bullneck, and Captain Ulruk of Murga, Snagrod had assembled a force not seen since the Second War for Armageddon. Less than 1,000 Space Marines now stood between 200 million souls and their doom. The casualties incurred during this war unpreventable due to the extreme methods used by the insane Warboss. Arriving in system from a near-suicidal warp jump, To the horror of the Crimson Fists, Snagrod's fleet stopped only 150 kilometers from Rindsworld's orbit. The risky gambit, allowing the Greenskins to circumvent the majority of orbital defenses as they deployed to the surface within only 3 hours of their arrival. Quickly destroying the vast majority of the defense armada and orbital fleet, now positioned behind their lines. Only a single Crimson Fist Voidcraft, the Crusader, escaped the mayhem, venturing forth to seek aid from outside the Loki sector. Attempting to sunder the aerial deployments of Urzog Magkull, the Crimson Fist Fortress Monastery, the Arx Tyrannus began to fire surface-to-space countermeasures, an otherwise textbook response, complicated by a 1 in a billion mishap. Firing a missile to destroy the Greenskins descending with speed, the payload corkscrewed mid-flight, changing direction to return to the surface, burrowing 200 meters below the depths of the Arx Tyrannus before detonating. Its explosion causing a chain reaction within the Fortress Monastery as the munitions of the chapter set alight. The death toll would be catastrophic. A single moment within the first day of combat, bringing low among the greatest Astartes creeds known to man. All gene seed lost, reliquaries housing priceless artifacts destroyed, and untold labor serfs perishing. Pedro Cantor awoke from the explosion to find himself and only 15 fellow battle brothers stationed upon the outer defenses to have survived from the 600 within the fortress's embrace. Reuniting with his stalwart comrade in arms, Alessio Cortez, the Immortal, Pedro Cantor resolved to redeploy what remained of his forces to New Rin City. A grim yet reasonable compromise, knowing that such small numbers of Astartes could not defend such a vast populace. Traveling over the expanse of 1,000 kilometers to reach the capital, Cantor's band of survivors moved during nightfall to best capitalize on the Greenskins' short-sightedness. Witnessing the depravity of the Orcs as they tortured defenseless citizens, the Crimson Fist could not intervene without being overwhelmed. Their pride wounded as they resolved to fight another day with their chapter restored to their former glory, rather than give in to extinction. With exception to New Rin City, every stronghold and outpost fell to the Greenskin tide. Hundreds of millions of civilians slaughtered by the Orcs, as Pedro and his band of warriors restrained their innate hunger for retribution. Captain Drigo Alves likewise enacted the Ceres Protocol, stating that all Astartes within the walls of New Rin must not sacrifice their lives to protect civilians due to the likelihood that they alone now stood as the last remnants of the chapter. Finding upon small bands of civilians during their venture, against the advisement of several Astartes, Pedro Cantor allowed their slowed march to accommodate the mortals, himself carrying a frail mother, Ghislaine, as her children followed his great strides, made to their salvation. Marching to the sanctuary of Jadeberry Hill as they followed the River Rin, Cantor's men aided the forces of Huron Grim as they defended the Orc incursion, attempting to infiltrate New Rin City. The sergeant relaying the valorous last act of Captain Alves, who had sacrificed his life within the Menzilan Arcade to seal away portions of the city, preventing further losses within the Crimson Fist bastion. Assuming command of the remaining 228 Crimson Fists stationed within the capital, the surviving 16 million populace within, now encompassing only 8% of the global population, began to endure a grueling siege.
Esker said again. I have a permit to be here.
Only one of the figures wore black armor. The others were clad in ceramite plating, the color of deep oceans on other, better, untainted worlds. One of them, the one whose armor was draped in a robed toga of rich red, leaned on a massive axe.
"He has a permit,"
the axe wielder said.
"Impressive,"
voxed one of the others. His helm was white, and he wore a bulky gauntlet on one arm, complete with a clicking scanner and several tools that looked like flesh drills and bone saws. Esker had to tear his eyes away from the torture device, his hands trembling as he reached for his carry bag, fumbling for his printed paper permit.
"Enough,"
the warrior in black said. He had a brutal, ornate war maul over one shoulder, inlaid with Gothic scripture.
"My brothers meant no offense with their taunting words. This is Sergeant Demetrian, Brother Imric, Brother Toma, and Apothecary Thane. And you are?"
Esker, he replied. Esker of Teresh, a necronomer, Lord. I came here for my order. I record that—
"I am aware of a necronomer's duties, Esker of Teresh."
The old man's hands were still trembling as he put out the permit. He hadn't risen. He wasn't sure his knees would allow it.
Here, my lord, my permit. See?
You do not need to show me any permit, Esker. I am no lord. My rank is chaplain. My name is Argo. Use either when addressing me. What brings you here?
The old man swallowed again and gestured to the statue rising above him.
I record the fallen, their names, their deeds.
That is not what I meant.
The chaplain reached up to his armored collar, disengaging the seals. Air pressure released in a sighing hiss, and he pulled the helm free. He was young. Esker could scarcely believe it. Despite the warrior's immense bulk, he seemed scarcely older than 20 or 30. His eyes were pale blue and curiously kind. I mean, the chaplain continued, his deep voice clear without the vox crackle. Why have you come to Rindsworld? Our fallen are recorded. They've been recorded many times over, in hundreds of archives. Esker felt something like a blush taking hold.
This was as much a pilgrimage as a duty. I've always wanted to walk here, in the necropolis, and see it with my own eyes. My order seeks out places of great mortis resonance, of great emotion and memory. We collect memories of the dead, iconic images, untold lore, the moments that get forgotten, that never get recorded in traditional, sterile archives.
Argo went to his knees, crouching by the old man. The ceaseless hum of his active power armor set Esker's gums itching. Even the smallest movements made the suit of black ceramite growl and snarl. This, the chaplain said softly, is the graveyard of the Crimson Fists. We return here ourselves on very rare occasions, to perform pilgrimages of our own. We come home to pray, to reflect, to remember, before we journey back to the stars. Hatred keeps us crusading. Regret brings us home. Shame always calls us back. Argo helped the old man rise and escorted him a few steps away. You wish something for your archives, something less sterile and dry than a mere name. The warrior gestured to the abandoned, unfinished parchment etching.
I'd be honored, Lord.
Argo, the chaplain corrected with a half smile. One of the others stepped forward. This one wore a shoulder guard of shining silver, with his left arm painted to match. He was marked with the symbol of the Holy Inquisition.
I am Toma. The warrior whose grave you are etching was Afrin. Let it be known in your off-world archive that Afrin was a murderer shot with a bolter. I never saw him miss.
I am Imric, said the next, the warrior with the bandolier of alien skulls. Afrin once beat me in a fistfight. I never forgave him for that. The next to step forward was the warrior with the white helm. I am Vayne. I was the one to harvest Afrin's gene seed. He lives on, at the genetic level, within the chapter. Let that be known in your archives, Esker of Teresh. The last to step forward was the axe-bearer in the scarlet toga.
I am Demetrian. Afrin's laughter banished all doubt among his brothers. Let it be known that he was among those missed most by we who survived.
Esker was writing frantically, heedless of his arthritic knuckles. At last, he looked at Argo.
And you, Lord?
The chaplain said nothing. Something passed between him and the old man, some silent understanding. Argo turned, unlocking his gauntlet and drawing a gladius from a sheath at his thigh. He drew the sword across his palm, a clean, bloodletting slice that painted the blade red. Without a word, he pressed his bleeding hand to the statue's chest. The other 4 warriors did the same. All 5 of them honored their fallen brother with their crimson hands pressed to his cold chest. Unity, even beyond death. The kind of kinship that so easily survives the grave. Solus, Esker whispered.
Compliance,
replied the servitor, interpreting its master's needs. Its imagifier ticked and clicked as it recorded this rarest, most precious of moments. Few souls in the Imperium ever bore witness to the intimate privacy of the Adeptus Astartes honoring their fallen. In a long life of service, traveling to 3 dozen worlds, Esker had never even seen traces of such a moment in any of his order's archives. His recording would be the first. The Crimson Fist withdrew their hands and replaced their gauntlets. Argo made the sign of the Aquila, his gloved hands forming the Imperial Eagle over his chestplate. Remember us, Esker of Teresh. Remember Rindsworld, and remember Afrin of the 5th Company.
I will, my lord. He could barely speak. I will.
Die well, the chaplain said, as he replaced his helm. The last words left his skullish faceplate as a vicious vox snarl.
But live well, before that happens.
Only a week following the arrival of Pedro Cantor, the month of hammering rains began, the rainfall flooding both the Bacomac and River Rin, delaying the Orcs at the price of another cost. The floods followed by scorching summer warmth. The torrents of water, mixed with the Orcs' excrement, began to vaporize, causing abhorrent miasmas surrounding the capital. The Rinsguard suffered heatstroke en masse until the subsequent freak winter wrought more lives, temperatures declining to lows never recorded during the last 600 years of data. For 563 days, the defenders waited for salvation, Warboss Snagrod eventually growing bored of persecuting the Silver Citadel and leaving his men stranded upon Rinsworld as it sought pillaging anew within the Loki sector. Aided by the nominal yet brave Rinsguard Airwing, salvaged from the destruction, their duty to protect the planet's shipping lanes proved crucial in sustaining what remained of the populace, commanded by Planetary Governor Maya Cagliestra and General Sadis Mir. Yet finally, after 18 months of martial law and grinding siege, an Imperial relief fleet arrived, led by Lord Admiral Galtair. The War of Snagrod fragmented with the departure of their warboss, Astartes reinforcements consisting of the Dark Angels, White Scars, Storm Lords, White Panthers, Angels in Carmine, Blood Drinkers, Minotaurs, and their own primogenitor, the Imperial Fists, joining the fray. Supported by Astra Militarum regiments and Navis Imperialis air support, the Imperials made quick work of the Greenskins, for while the Orcs had grown strong, fighting for such a protracted period of time, they could not stand against such an alliance of legendary Space Marine chapters. Dwindled to a force incapable of matching the might brought to bear by their contemporaries, Pedro Cantor would regardless not stand idle in the reclamation of his homeworld, his duty to avenge the many dead he had failed to protect, requiring a symbolic victory. Undertaking the mission to recapture the spaceport of New Rin City in order to deploy Titans to confront the Gargants roaming upon the planet, Pedro Cantor ordered his men to unblock the underground tunnels of the city, clogged with piles of slain Orcs. Capturing the Orc communications relay upon resurfacing from the tunnels, with Alessio by his side, the chapter master confronted the returned Arch-Arsonist and his lieutenant, Urzog. Drawn by the fresh combatants to Rinsworld, Snagrod would not allow such a good fight to go unanswered, Alessio bitterly fighting the hulking Urzog, heaped in iron armor, as Cantor fought his unarmored master. Exceptionally quick, due to its lack of hindrance by protective plating, Cantor with blade and power fist in hand brawled Snagrod, striking his sword into the Greenskin's shield module before burying its edge first into the beast's side, followed by a punch to its shoulder, obliterating its deltoid muscles. Failing to deliver the killing blow with his sword, Cantor's unpowered fist pummeled the Orc's face, the cowardly creature knowing its end to be near, throwing Pedro aside before fleeing in disgrace. The spaceport had been seized, and now Titans would end the miserable war, the guns of the machine gods of war laying low their crude Gargants as Imperial forces mopped up what remained. Driving the Orcs into the wilderness, one such battle waged upon the planet would be led by Commissar General Mordred van Horkik, the skirmish within the designated Desolation Valley held by Orc warboss Votzug, regaled by the mortal soldiery of the Imperium, as the aerial ace Richter de Garjani fought the Black Baron to a stalemate until the Imperials proved victorious. Attempting to draw Snagrod back into the conflict to end what was started, Pedro Cantor led a Space Marine strike team to Black Reef City, wherein mech boss Votzug had constructed a beacon. Aided by Wing Commander El Oren, who led a perilous lightning strike on the beacon, the rock barrage summoned by its signal was thrown off course, leading to the destruction of Snagrod's last-ditch effort to turn the tide of war. Victorious over the Greenskins, though much valor was won by the Imperium, the cost in lives was too great to find worthy glory. Pedro Cantor and his men, knowing their fate likely to diminish until nothing left remained of their legacy but stories. Yet they would not go lightly into the embrace of oblivion, for one glorious battle remained to decide the fate of the Crimson Fists.
These were days so dark, they had been rivaled only once in the history of the chapter, and darker still were yet to come. But darkness is not a thing in and of itself. It has no form, no substance.
It is merely the absence of light, and where light enters, darkness always recedes. The smallest, most ephemeral spark can grow to burn like a mighty sun. It requires naught but the right kind of fuel. Snagrod gave us all the fuel we needed. Once more seeking justice from the Greenskins, though Rincewild had been liberated 6 months prior, and Imperial forces once more held dominion of the planet, Orc stragglers remained upon its surface. Lurking within the Jaden Mountains, the Orcs conducted raids upon the surviving populace. The slight made against the already war-ravaged citizens, too great for Cantor to ignore. Dedicating what remained of his chapter to cleanse their homeworld of their hated foe, cavern by cavern, the Astartes rooted out the Xenos, their efforts, while effective, causing what remained of the Orcs to unify. Amassing their full strength within the Traitor's Gorge, every Orc from leagues of their insurgent points had rallied to quell the Crimson Fists. The 24 Space Marines deployed to the skirmish, enacting a massive toll on the hundreds of Greenskins that attempted to ambush their position. Pedro Cantor standing at their vanguard, each battle brother fought shoulder to shoulder as they struggled to reach high ground. The loss of all their Thunderhawk gunships from the prior campaign, preventing them from achieving aerial support. Knowing neither evacuation nor reinforcement to be forthcoming, with 3 Astartes already slain in the ravine below, Cantor, though the only not to sustain wounds, readied himself and his men to die. Drowning Traitor's Gorge in blood as they made barricades from the slain Orcs. As their last stand reached its zenith, an unlikely ally rose to aid their plight. Descending from the Widow's Spire of the Western Darkridge, Eldar of Craftworld Alatok fired upon the Greenskins, now pinned between themselves and the Astartes. The minimal surviving Orcs fleeing from Traitor's Gorge, Farseer Eldaraf Starbane confronted Pedro Cantor, the Eldari advising the Space Marines to pursue the Greenskins to achieve a great victory. Asking what alternatives should be incurred should he ignore the Eldar's suggestion, Starbane warned that they would once again grow in number, inevitably leading to the destruction of the Loki sector 50 years subsequently should they ignore this chance. Seeking an alliance with the Eldar in their purge of the Orcs, Eldaraf forewarned that the next time they should meet, his hands would be soaked in Pedro's blood before departing from the encounter. Leading his men back into the Traitor's Gorge, Cantor and his men slew what remained of the Greenskins, cleansing the Jaden Mountains of their foes, yet Pedro would forever feel the shadow of the Farseer over him. New Rin City, now standing alone as the last stronghold of his homeworld, many years would be spent burying the dead souls who had cried out for salvation from the Lord Hellblade, which never came. Bad Landing remains lost to the Orcs to this day, the estimated 20 million Greenskins still stationed upon its surface, unable to be quelled due to another incident upon Rincewild. Beset by a demon incursion, with the birth of the Great Rift at the dawn of the 42nd millennium, the armies of the Demon Prince, Raxor, once more ravaged the Crimson Fist chapter after painstaking efforts were made to rebuild their numbers. The last stand of the Crimson Fists, aided with the timely arrival of Rabute Guilliman's Indomitas Crusade, the avenging son of the Emperor put Raxor's forces to the sword before making ready resupply efforts. Meeting with the beleaguered chapter master with the battle's conclusion, Guilliman remarked how impressive his efforts to rebuild his creed had been, regardless of his lack of resources. Refitting his Indomitas Crusade for 3 days upon Rin's world, Guilliman bestowed reinforcements of Primaris Space Marines to replenish Cantor's losses, the extinction of his chapter prevented in their time of greatest need. Yet even restored to full chapter strength, Cantor refuses to spend his men's lives needlessly. For too many had fallen on the soil of Rin's world, and untold millions still had yet to be avenged. Cantor crouched at the woman's side and removed his helmet. Cortez tried to read his face, but it betrayed no emotion.
Gillen, said the chapter master. Can you hear me?
The woman's eyes were closed, but her lips parted. Weakly, quietly, she said,
"They were so heavy. So heavy."
Cantor nodded.
Yes, he said, but you did well to bring them this far.
Reaching out, he lifted the smallest children away from her and gestured to the older children to take them. They did so, and Cantor turned back to the woman. The Emperor's mercy, thought Cortez. You should not have to do this, Pedro. It is my fault. It is my soul that should bear the stain. Before he could communicate this, Cantor spoke. It is time, he said. And he reached down to the woman with his gauntleted hands. Time that someone carried you now. As Cortez watched, the chapter master lifted the woman and stood to his full height, cradling her exhausted form in his arms. She looked so small and fragile against the sculpted ceramite chest, little more than a rag doll. Then the chapter master turned to Cortez and said over the link, Once we are among the trees, they will have a better chance. They are charges of the chapter now, and we cannot abandon them. Carrying the woman as if she weighed nothing at all, Cantor began striding for the distant tree line. Over the link, he added, Help the children, Alessio. Help them to cover quickly. The suns will be up within moments.
This has been a tale of the Great Imperium of Man, read by the Remembrancer. Loss is among the cruelest of emotions, for we as humans tether our worth, identity, and meaning to myriad physical forms. Homes, people, and material possessions all diminish and fade with time, and none shall take what is gained beyond the precipice of death. Yet the sting inflicted from unjust deprivation is felt by all. Only in gratitude is the grief of loss allayed, for in appreciating the time you have with those around you and the trappings which allow for your well-being can regret be diminished. So never forget that nothing lasts eternal, not those around you, nor your own being. For only with understanding that life is fleeting shall you value the connections and amenities to which you benefit.